I am an owl, and the night belongs to me. When the sun dips below the horizon and the world retreats into shadow, I emerge from my roost with senses that transform darkness into a hunting ground more vivid than daylight could ever be. My existence is defined by silence and precision, by adaptations so refined that scientists still marvel at the engineering of my body, and by instincts honed across millions of years of nocturnal evolution. To understand what I am requires first understanding that I am not a single entity, but rather a member of one of the most diverse and successful orders of birds on Earth. The order Strigiformes contains approximately 250 species spread across two distinct families: the Strigidae, or typical owls, which includes most species humans encounter, and the Titanidae, the barn owls and bay owls, which possess heart-shaped facial discs and a more limited diversity. Within these families, we range from the massive Eurasian eagle owl, standing as tall as 75 centimeters with a wingspan exceeding 180 centimeters, and weighing up to 4,000 grams, to the tiny elf owl of the American Southwest, barely 13 centimeters long and weighing a mere 40 grams. This extraordinary size variation reflects our adaptation to virtually every terrestrial habitat outside Antarctica, from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforest, from desert scrub to dense temperate woodland. My classification places me among the birds, class Aves, but within that vast assemblage, owls occupy a unique evolutionary position. For many years, scientists debated our closest relatives. Early taxonomists grouped us near hawks and eagles based on our predatory lifestyle and hooked beaks, but molecular evidence has revealed a different story. Modern genetic analysis suggests our nearest relatives are the nightjars, frogmouths, and their kin in the order Caprimulgiformes, nocturnal birds that share our affinity for darkness, though they hunt insects rather than vertebrate prey. This relationship has been confirmed through analysis of DNA sequences from both nuclear and mitochondrial genes, and it tells us that our resemblance to diurnal raptors is a case of convergent evolution, where unrelated lineages independently develop similar solutions to similar ecological challenges. The fossil record of owls extends back approximately 60 million years to the early Paleocene epoch, shortly after the extinction event that eliminated non-avian dinosaurs. The oldest known owl fossils come from deposits in North America and Europe, showing that our lineage capitalized quickly on the ecological opportunities available in the recovering world. These ancient owls already possessed many of the features that define us today, suggesting that our fundamental body plan evolved rapidly and proved so successful that it has remained largely unchanged across tens of millions of years. Throughout the Cenozoic era, owls diversified and spread, adapting to new habitats as continents drifted and climates shifted, ultimately achieving the global distribution we possess today. My body is an instrument of nocturnal predation, and every aspect of my anatomy serves that function. Consider my head, which appears disproportionately large relative to my body. This enlarged skull houses not only my substantial brain, but also the complex structures that make my sensory abilities possible. My eyes are enormous, among the largest of any animal relative to body size, and they are not spherical like those of most vertebrates but rather tubular or cylindrical in shape. This elongated form allows for a longer focal length and a larger cornea and lens, which together gather more light than a spherical eye of the same diameter could manage. The result is visual sensitivity that, in some species, approaches the theoretical limits of vertebrate vision under low light conditions. However, this design comes with a significant constraint. My eyes are essentially fixed in their sockets. I cannot move them to track objects or scan my surroundings as humans do. Instead, I have evolved extraordinary neck flexibility to compensate. My cervical vertebrae are specially adapted with additional articulation points and expanded passages for blood vessels, allowing me to rotate my head approximately 270 degrees in either direction. This means I can look directly behind me without moving my body, a capability that seems impossible to mammals, but is achieved through a combination of 14 cervical vertebrae, twice the number humans possess, and a vascular system that prevents blood flow from being restricted during extreme rotation. The vessels that supply my brain do not run directly through the vertebrae, but rather pass through enlarged openings that provide slack, and they can dilate to maintain flow even when the neck is twisted to its maximum extent. My vision is not simply sensitive but also highly acute. While I do not see well in absolute darkness, a common misconception, I can detect prey movements in light levels approximately 100 times lower than what a human would require. This is achieved through a high density of rod photoreceptors in my retina, cells specialized for detecting light and motion rather than color. Most owl species have relatively few cone photoreceptors, which means our color vision is limited compared to diurnal birds, though not absent entirely. Research suggests we see primarily in shades of blue and green, with reduced sensitivity to red wavelengths. During daylight, my vision remains functional but less impressive than at twilight or under moonlight, when my eyes truly excel. The positioning of my eyes is equally important. Unlike birds with laterally placed eyes that provide a wide field of view, my eyes face forward, creating substantial binocular overlap. This forward-facing arrangement gives me stereoscopic vision across approximately 70 degrees, allowing precise depth perception essential for judging the distance to prey. When I see a mouse move in the leaf litter 30 meters away, I can calculate its exact position in three-dimensional space and plan my flight path accordingly. This binocular field comes at the cost of total visual field, however. While a pigeon can see nearly 360 degrees around itself, I have a total visual field of approximately 220 degrees, with a blind spot directly behind my head. This is why I must constantly move my head to monitor my surroundings, bobbing and weaving to parallax objects and better judge distances. Yet vision is not my primary hunting sense. That distinction belongs to my hearing, which is perhaps the most sophisticated of any animal yet studied. The architecture of my skull has been radically modified to function as a sound gathering and processing instrument. My facial disc, that characteristic flattened face surrounded by stiffened feathers, is not merely decorative but serves as a parabolic reflector, channeling sound waves toward my ear openings much as a satellite dish focuses radio signals. The feathers of the facial disc are specially arranged in concentric rings, and I can adjust their position using specialized muscles to tune the disc for different frequencies or directions. My ear openings themselves are asymmetrical in many owl species, positioned at different heights on either side of my skull. In species like the boreal owl or the northern saw-whet owl, one ear opening sits higher and angles upward, while the other is lower and angles downward. This asymmetry allows me to localize sounds in the vertical plane as well as horizontally. When a vole rustles beneath a blanket of snow, sound reaches my two ears at slightly different times and at different intensities. My brain processes these interaural time differences and interaural level differences to construct a three-dimensional sound map of my environment. Research has shown that barn owls, which have been extensively studied, can localize sounds to within 1 degree in both horizontal and vertical planes, an accuracy that allows me to strike prey I cannot see at all, hunting purely by sound. The auditory processing centers in my brain are correspondingly enlarged. The medulla and midbrain contain specialized neural circuits dedicated to comparing the timing and intensity of sounds arriving at each ear, with neurons tuned to specific time delays measured in microseconds. This neural machinery operates with such precision that I can detect the location of a sound source based on time differences of just 30 microseconds, far below the threshold of human perception. Field studies have documented owls successfully hunting in complete darkness, striking prey hidden beneath snow or leaf litter with no visual cues whatsoever, relying entirely on the sounds of movement. The structure of my skull amplifies these capabilities. The bones of my skull are configured to channel sound efficiently to the inner ear, and in some species, the skull itself may be asymmetrical to enhance the directional differences in sound reception. The external ear openings are surrounded by specialized folds of skin and feather that can be adjusted to modify sound reception, effectively providing me with adjustable external ear structures despite being a bird. My hearing range extends beyond that of humans in both directions. I can detect frequencies from approximately 200 Hz to 12,000 Hz, with peak sensitivity between 3,000 and 9,000 Hz, the range where small mammal vocalizations and movements are loudest. Some studies suggest I may also perceive infrasound below 200 Hz, though this remains an area of ongoing research. What is certain is that I am exquisitely sensitive to the high-frequency rustling sounds made by rodents moving through vegetation or beneath ground cover, and I can filter out background noise such as wind or rain to focus on these biologically relevant sounds. My hunting success depends not only on detecting prey, but on approaching it undetected, and here my flight capabilities become essential. I am capable of nearly silent flight, an achievement unmatched by most birds and critical for a predator that relies on surprise. This silence is achieved through three key modifications to my wing feathers. First, the leading edge of my primary flight feathers bears a comb-like serrated fringe. These serrations break up the turbulent airflow that would normally create the whooshing sound of a wing moving through air, reducing the amplitude of sound waves generated by around 20 decibels compared to birds without such adaptations. Second, the trailing edges of my flight feathers are fringed with flexible extensions that dampen the vortices that form as air flows off the back of the wing. These vortices would normally produce low-frequency sounds, but the fringe disrupts them before they can fully form. Third, the upper surfaces of my flight feathers are covered with a soft, velvety down that absorbs high-frequency sounds. Together, these three modifications make my wing beats virtually inaudible to both prey and human observers, even when I pass overhead at close range. Researchers measuring the sound of barn owl flight have recorded noise levels below the threshold of human hearing at distances of just 2 meters. This silent flight does come with aerodynamic costs. The modifications that make me quiet reduce the overall efficiency of my wings, meaning I must work harder to generate lift and thrust compared to a similarly sized bird without these adaptations. My flight is relatively slow and buoyant rather than fast and direct. Depending on my species, I may cruise at speeds between 20 and 40 kilometers per hour, though I can reach speeds of 60 or even 80 kilometers per hour in brief pursuit or when diving on prey. My flight style is typically characterized by alternating periods of flapping and gliding, with deep, slow wing beats that appear almost leisurely. Yet this apparent laziness disguises remarkable maneuverability. I can twist and turn through dense forest, change direction abruptly, and brake to near-instantaneous stops when striking prey. My wings are broad relative to my body size, giving me a low wing loading, which means my weight is distributed over a large wing area. This allows for slow, controlled flight and the ability to carry prey that may weigh 50% or more of my own body weight. The aspect ratio of my wings, the proportion of length to width, tends to be relatively low compared to fast-flying birds, further supporting maneuverability over speed. When I extend my wings fully, the span may be 3 to 4 times my body length, creating substantial surface area for generating lift at low speeds. My tail serves as both rudder and brake. It is relatively short and broad in most owl species, providing control authority during slow flight and allowing rapid changes in direction. When approaching a perch or prey, I fan my tail wide and drop it, increasing drag and bringing me to a controlled stop. My legs swing forward at the moment of impact, with talons spread wide to maximize the chances of contact with prey and to distribute the force of impact across multiple contact points. Those talons are formidable weapons, driven by powerful leg muscles and toes equipped with sharp, recurved claws. My feet are zygodactyl in most species, meaning I have 2 toes facing forward and 2 facing backward, though I can rotate one outer toe to face either forward or backward depending on the situation. This configuration provides a strong grip from multiple angles and makes it difficult for prey to escape once caught. The grip strength of larger owl species can exceed several hundred newtons of force, sufficient to puncture the skull of a rabbit or crush the spine of a large rat. The underside of my toes are covered with rough, spiny scales called spicules that provide additional grip on struggling prey or slippery perches. The strike itself happens with startling speed. When I identify prey and commit to an attack, I drop from my perch or redirect my flight path, approaching with talons extended and wings raised. In the final fraction of a second, my feet swing forward, my head pulls back to protect my eyes, and my talons close around the prey with lethal force. The impact alone may be sufficient to stun or kill small prey through blunt trauma, while my talons simultaneously penetrate vital organs or sever the spinal cord. For larger prey that survives the initial strike, I may deliver killing bites with my beak, though this is less common. More often, I maintain my grip and wait for the prey to succumb to shock and trauma. My beak, though less emphasized than my talons in the killing process, is nonetheless an important tool. It is short, strongly hooked and sharply pointed, designed for tearing flesh rather than cracking seeds or probing flowers. The upper mandible curves down over the lower, and the sharp tip can easily pierce hide and muscle. I use my beak to tear prey into manageable pieces, to remove fur or feathers, and occasionally to dispatch still-living victims. The base of my beak is partially concealed by specialized feathers called rictal bristles, which may serve a protective function, preventing injury to my face from struggling prey or helping me sense objects very close to my beak. My digestive system is adapted to process whole prey items, including bones, fur, feathers, and other indigestible materials. After I swallow prey, it enters my crop, a storage chamber in my esophagus where initial chemical breakdown begins. From there, food moves to my glandular stomach, where acids and enzymes break down soft tissues, and then to my muscular stomach or gizzard, where physical grinding continues. Unlike owls that consume primarily soft-bodied prey, species that regularly eat vertebrates with substantial skeletal structure have more muscular gizzards capable of crushing smaller bones. However, not everything I consume can be digested. Fur, feathers, bones, teeth, claws, and insect exoskeletons resist breakdown and accumulate in my gizzard. Approximately 8 to 16 hours after feeding, Depending on my species and the type of prey, these materials are compressed into a compact pellet and regurgitated. This pellet ejection is a normal and necessary part of my digestive cycle, not a sign of illness. The pellets are then deposited below my roost or perch, where they accumulate over time. Scientists have long used these pellets as a non-invasive way to study owl diet, teasing apart the compressed mass to identify prey species from their bones and other remains. Analysis of pellet collections has revealed that many owl species consume a far wider variety of prey than direct observation would suggest, including species that are rarely seen active at night. What I eat depends greatly on my size and habitat. The smallest owls, such as elf owls and pygmy owls, feed primarily on insects and other arthropods, occasionally taking small vertebrates such as lizards or mice. Medium-sized owls, including most Strix and Asio species, focus on small mammals, particularly rodents such as voles, mice, rats, and occasionally rabbits or squirrels. Birds may also feature in the diet, especially during breeding season when songbirds are abundant and nesting. Some species, such as the spotted owl, supplement their diet with significant numbers of flying squirrels, which are captured as they glide between trees at night. Large owls possess the capability to take much more substantial prey. Eurasian eagle owls and great horned owls are apex predators in their ecosystems, capable of killing and eating prey as large as foxes, young deer, domestic cats, and other owls, including smaller members of their own species. These powerful hunters are opportunistic, taking whatever prey is abundant and vulnerable, though they too rely heavily on medium-sized mammals. Snowy owls, adapted to the Arctic tundra, feed primarily on lemmings during the breeding season, with a single family consuming hundreds or even thousands of lemmings over the course of raising their young. When lemming populations crash, as they do cyclically, snowy owls may shift to alternative prey such as hares, ground-nesting birds, or fish, or they may fail to breed at all during lean years. Some owl species have specialized diets. Fishing owls, found in Africa and Asia, feed primarily on fish and aquatic invertebrates. These species have lost or greatly reduced the sound-silencing adaptations of their plumage, since silence is less critical when hunting aquatic prey that cannot hear airborne sounds. Instead, they have developed long, unfeathered legs and specialized spicules on the soles of their feet that provide enhanced grip on slippery fish. Spectacled owls and other tropical species may include substantial numbers of insects, bats, and other nocturnal animals in their diets, reflecting the different composition of tropical versus temperate ecosystems. My hunting strategy varies by species and habitat. Some of us are perch hunters, sitting motionless on a branch or post, scanning the ground below for movement. When prey is detected, we drop directly onto it from above, converting gravitational potential energy into kinetic energy for a powerful strike. This strategy is energetically efficient, minimizing flight time while maximizing hunting coverage. I may wait on a single perch for many minutes, barely moving except to turn my head, my camouflaged plumage rendering me nearly invisible against the tree bark. Others among us are active hunters, quartering back and forth over open ground in slow, buoyant flight. Short-eared owls and barn owls often hunt this way, flying low over grasslands and marshes, watching and listening for signs of prey below. This strategy covers more ground than perch hunting and is better suited to open habitats where elevated perches are scarce. The energetic cost is higher, but so is the detection range. Some species employ mixed strategies, combining perch hunting with active searching flights. I might spend the early evening perch hunting near my roosting site, then fly to a different area and hunt on the wing, and finally return to perch hunting before dawn. This flexibility allows me to adapt to changing conditions such as weather, prey abundance, and disturbance. Weather significantly impacts my hunting success. Light rain or snow may have little effect or even improve hunting by dampening background noise, making prey sounds more detectable. However, heavy precipitation creates so much noise that it masks the sounds of prey, forcing me to rely more heavily on vision. Strong winds similarly interfere with sound localization and make flight more difficult and energetically costly. During severe weather, I may not hunt at all, relying instead on stored body fat to see me through. Owls in seasonal environments typically enter the winter with elevated fat reserves, sometimes weighing 20 to 30% more than their summer weight, and this fat is gradually depleted over the course of winter, especially during prolonged periods of severe weather. My activity pattern is primarily nocturnal, but there is considerable variation among species. Some owls, particularly those in far northern latitudes where summer nights are brief or absent, are active during daylight. Snowy owls, northern hawk owls, and northern pygmy owls all hunt regularly during the day, especially during the breeding season when the energetic demands of feeding young are at their peak. Other species are crepuscular, most active during twilight periods at dawn and dusk, when light levels are low but not absent. Barn owls, short-eared owls, and burrowing owls fall into this category, though they may also hunt through the night if conditions are favorable. Truly nocturnal species, such as tawny owls, spotted owls, and most megascope species, are rarely seen active during daylight unless disturbed. These species spend daylight hours roosting in concealed locations, typically pressing close to a tree trunk or tucking into dense foliage where their cryptic plumage provides camouflage. The choice of roost site is not random. I select locations that offer protection from weather, concealment from predators, and proximity to good hunting areas. In some cases, I return to the same roost site day after day for weeks or months, while in others, I rotate among several sites within my home range. Roosting behavior involves more than simply sleeping. I spend time preening, maintaining my plumage by drawing each feather through my beak to clean and realign the barbs. This maintenance is critical for both insulation and flight performance. I also engage in sunbathing when opportunities arise, spreading my wings and exposing them to direct sunlight. The purpose of this behavior is not fully understood, but it may help control parasites, synthesize vitamin D, or simply provide warmth. I may also engage in what appears to be stretching or exercise, extending wings and legs and flexing muscles, possibly to maintain flexibility and readiness. My plumage coloration is typically cryptic, blending with the bark, lichen, and foliage of my habitat. Browns, grays, and rufous tones dominate, often with intricate patterns of spots, bars, and streaks that break up my outline and make me nearly invisible when motionless. Some species exhibit color polymorphism, where individuals within the same population may be gray morph or rufous morph, with intermediate forms also occurring. The proportion of morphs within a population may vary geographically, and there is evidence that the different color forms may be adapted to different environmental conditions. Gray morphs may have advantages in regions with more gray lichens and bark, while rufous morphs may be better camouflaged in areas with more reddish or brown substrates. Sexual dimorphism in size is common among owls, though the pattern is reversed compared to most birds. In the majority of owl species, females are larger than males, sometimes substantially so. In northern hawk owls, females may be 10% heavier than males, while in Eurasian eagle owls, the difference can exceed 25%. The reasons for this reversed size dimorphism are debated. One hypothesis suggests that smaller males are more agile and better suited to capturing the majority of prey during the breeding season, while larger females are better equipped to defend the nest and young from predators. Another hypothesis focuses on energetics, proposing that larger females can store more energy reserves for egg production and incubation, while smaller males require less food for self-maintenance and can therefore devote more of their hunting success to provisioning the family. Plumage dimorphism between sexes is rare in owls. In most species, males and females are visually indistinguishable in the field, though there may be subtle differences in size or, in a few species, minor differences in coloration. Juveniles, however, often differ noticeably from adults. Young owls may be fluffier, with softer, downier plumage and less distinct markings. As they mature and undergo their first molt, they acquire adult-like plumage, though full adult appearance may not be achieved until the second or even third year of life. My vocalizations are among my most distinctive features, and they serve multiple functions in communication. The hooting, screeching, whistling, and hissing sounds that different owl species produce are used to advertise territory, attract mates, coordinate hunting and parenting activities, and signal alarm. The classic hoot associated with owls in popular culture is characteristic of certain species, particularly the great horned owl and the tawny owl, but many owls produce entirely different sounds. Barn owls emit eerie screeches and hisses. Screech owls produce whinnying trills. Pygmy owls give rapid series of toots. The variation in vocal repertoire across species is enormous, and for many species, vocalizations are the most reliable way to identify them in the field. The primary song, typically given by males, functions in territory advertisement and mate attraction. This vocalization is usually delivered from a prominent perch within the territory and may be repeated at regular intervals for hours, especially during the breeding season. The structure of the song conveys information about the singer's identity, location, and possibly quality. Playback experiments have shown that owls can recognize individual neighbors by their calls and respond differently to familiar versus unfamiliar individuals, a phenomenon known as the deer-enemy effect. Familiar neighbors, having established territorial boundaries, pose less threat than unknown intruders, and territorial owners may respond less aggressively to the calls of known neighbors. Females also vocalize, though typically less frequently than males. Female calls are often higher in pitch and may differ in structure from male songs. During courtship and pair formation, males and females may engage in duetting, with coordinated or alternating vocalizations that serve to strengthen the pair bond and jointly defend the territory. In some species, such as the eastern screech owl, duets are so precisely coordinated that it can be difficult for human listeners to distinguish that two birds are calling. Other vocalizations include alarm calls, given in response to predators or disturbances, contact calls used between mates or between parents and offspring, and begging calls given by hungry juveniles. The begging calls of young owls can be loud and persistent, especially as the chicks grow and their energy demands increase. These calls help parents locate their offspring in the darkness and may also stimulate increased provisioning effort. Beyond vocalizations, I communicate through visual displays. These include postures and movements that signal aggression, submission, or courtship intent. When threatened, I may adopt a tall, thin posture, sleeking my feathers against my body and raising my ear tufts if I possess them, making myself appear narrower and more cryptic. Alternatively, I may puff up my plumage, spread my wings, and hiss or clack my beak to appear larger and more intimidating. This threat display is often accompanied by swaying side to side, and may escalate to lunging or striking with talons if the threat does not retreat. Courtship displays are more varied and species-specific. Males may perform aerial displays, flying in undulating patterns or performing dives and swoops while vocalizing. Some species engage in courtship feeding, where the male captures prey and presents it to the female. This behavior not only demonstrates the male's hunting ability, but also provides the female with nutrition that will support egg production. The act of transferring food may involve the female begging like a chick, reinforcing the pair bond through behaviors that mimic the parent-offspring relationship. Precopulatory behavior often includes mutual preening, where mates gently preen each other's head and neck feathers, areas that an individual cannot easily reach alone. This allopreening strengthens social bonds and may also serve a practical function in maintaining plumage condition. Copulation itself is brief, lasting only a few seconds, with the male balancing on the female's back and twisting his tail to bring their cloaky into contact for sperm transfer. Copulation may be repeated many times over several days or weeks, increasing the likelihood of successful fertilization. Nest site selection is a critical component of reproductive success, yet most owl species do not construct their own nests. Instead, we rely on existing structures. Tree cavities are among the most commonly used sites, offering protection from weather and concealment from predators. Natural cavities form where branches have broken off and decay has hollowed out the trunk, or where woodpeckers have excavated holes in previous years. Competition for suitable cavities can be intense, and in some regions, nest box programs have been established to provide artificial cavities that supplement natural sites. Research has shown that in areas where nest boxes are provided, owl populations may increase significantly, indicating that cavity availability is often a limiting factor. Other species use stick nests built by other birds, particularly corvids and hawks, or by squirrels. Great horned owls frequently take over red-tailed hawk nests, sometimes evicting the hawks before they have finished nesting. Stick nests offer less protection than cavities but are often located in good hunting areas and provide a sturdy platform for raising young. Some owls nest on cliff ledges, in crevices among rocks, or even on the ground. Burrowing owls, as their name suggests, use underground burrows, typically those excavated by mammals such as ground squirrels or prairie dogs. These owls may modify the burrow entrance or chamber, but they do not dig the initial burrow themselves. Snowy owls and short-eared owls nest directly on the ground in open habitats, scraping a shallow depression in soil or vegetation, and relying on cryptic plumage and aggressive defense to protect their eggs and chicks. Egg-laying is timed to coincide with the period of maximum prey abundance for the growing chicks. In temperate regions, this typically means laying eggs in late winter or early spring, so that hatching occurs as rodent populations are increasing and prey are becoming more available. In tropical regions, breeding may be timed to the rainy season, when productivity is highest, or may occur opportunistically whenever conditions are favorable. The number of eggs laid or clutch size varies by species and is influenced by factors such as food availability, female condition, and latitude. Small owls may lay 2 to 4 eggs, medium-sized owls 3 to 7, and large owls 1 to 5. In some species, clutch size varies geographically, with northern populations laying larger clutches than southern populations, a pattern consistent with other bird species, and thought to reflect longer daylight hours for foraging during the northern breeding season. Eggs are laid asynchronously, typically at intervals of 1 to 3 days. Incubation begins with the first egg, meaning that eggs hatch in the order they were laid, resulting in a brood of chicks of different ages and sizes. This asynchronous hatching creates a size hierarchy within the nest, with the oldest chick being substantially larger than the youngest by the time the last egg hatches. This size difference has profound implications for chick survival. When food is abundant, all chicks may survive to fledging. However, when food is scarce, the smallest chicks may be outcompeted by their larger siblings and may starve or even be killed and consumed by their nest mates, a phenomenon known as siblicide. While this seems brutal, it is an adaptive strategy that ensures at least some offspring survive when resources are limited, rather than all chicks receiving insufficient food and the entire brood failing. Incubation is performed primarily or exclusively by the female, who remains on the nest continuously, relying on the male to bring food. The female's brood patch, an area of bare skin on her abdomen with increased blood flow, provides warmth to the eggs. Incubation periods range from approximately 3 weeks in small owls to 5 weeks or more in large species. During this time, the female is vulnerable, and nest defense becomes critical. Some species are highly aggressive in defending their nests, attacking intruders that approach too closely. Great horned owls and Eurasian eagle owls are notorious for striking humans who venture near active nests, and there are documented cases of serious injuries from talon strikes to the head and face. Other species rely more on cryptic behavior, with the incubating female freezing motionless or silently slipping off the nest and watching from a distance. Hatching is a gradual process, with each chick using an egg tooth, a small projection on the tip of its beak, to break through the shell from the inside. Newly hatched chicks are altricial, meaning they are helpless, blind, and covered with sparse white or grayish down. They are entirely dependent on parental care for warmth, protection, and food. The female broods the chicks continuously for the first days or weeks of life, depending on species and weather conditions, while the male continues to provide food for the entire family. Young owls grow rapidly, and their development is fueled by a diet of whole prey items delivered by both parents. As the chicks grow, their down is replaced by a denser, woollier second down, and eventually by juvenile feathers. Growth rates are impressive, particularly in larger species. A great gray owl chick may increase its weight from 50 grams at hatching to over 1,000 grams within a month. This rapid growth requires enormous amounts of food, and the parents may be hunting nearly continuously during the night to keep pace with the demands of multiple hungry chicks. As the chicks develop, their eyes open, typically within the first week of life, and they become more active and responsive. They begin to vocalize with begging calls that intensify as they age and grow hungrier. These calls help parents locate their offspring in the darkness and may also stimulate increased provisioning. By the time they are a few weeks old, the chicks are mobile within the nest or cavity, and they may begin to venture to the nest entrance or onto nearby branches, especially in open nest sites. This pre-fledging exploration is known as branching and allows young to exercise their muscles and develop coordination in a relatively safe environment close to the nest. Fledging, the point at which young leave the nest for sustained periods, occurs when the chicks are approximately 4 to 7 weeks old in small species and 8 to 12 weeks old in large species. At fledging, young owls are not yet fully capable of sustained flight and may spend several days or even weeks on the ground or in low vegetation, fluttering and hopping about while continuing to beg for food from parents. This post-fledging dependency period is a critical and vulnerable time. Young owls are conspicuous, noisy, and poorly coordinated, making them susceptible to predation by terrestrial carnivores such as foxes, coyotes, and domestic dogs and cats. Mortality rates during this period can be very high, with some studies suggesting that 50% or more of fledglings may die before reaching independence. Parents continue to feed fledglings for weeks or even months after they leave the nest. During this time, young owls gradually improve their flight skills, learn to hunt, and explore the landscape. Hunting proficiency develops slowly. Early attempts are often clumsy and unsuccessful, with young owls misjudging distances, missing prey, or failing to deliver killing strikes. Over time, through trial and error and possibly through observation of parents, young owls improve. The development of hunting skills is one of the key factors determining when juveniles become independent. In some species, young may remain with parents until the next breeding season, while in others, they disperse within a few months of fledging. Dispersal is a critical life history stage that reduces inbreeding and allows individuals to find vacant territories or habitats. Juvenile owls may disperse short distances, settling within a few kilometers of their natal area, or they may disperse long distances, traveling tens or even hundreds of kilometers. Dispersal distance and direction appear to be influenced by factors such as habitat availability, population density, food abundance, and individual condition. Long-distance movements are risky, exposing juveniles to unfamiliar terrain, competition with resident adults, predation, and anthropogenic threats such as vehicle collisions and power lines. Some owl species exhibit eruptive or nomadic movements in response to fluctuations in prey populations. Snowy owls are the most dramatic example, with large numbers moving south from the Arctic into southern Canada and the northern United States during winters when lemming populations are low. These eruptions can bring hundreds or even thousands of snowy owls into areas where they are normally rare or absent. Similar though less dramatic movements occur in other species, such as northern hawk owls, boreal owls, and great gray owls, which may move south or to lower elevations during years of prey scarcity. These movements are not true migrations, as they are irregular in timing and magnitude, but rather reflect the bird's need to track fluctuating food resources. True migration, where populations move predictably between breeding and non-breeding ranges on an annual cycle, is relatively rare among owls. However, some populations of certain species do migrate. Northern populations of short-eared owls, long-eared owls, and northern saw-whet owls migrate south for the winter, while southern populations may be resident year-round. Flammulated owls, small insectivorous owls of western North America, are fully migratory, breeding in montane forests and wintering in Mexico and Central America. Their migration is driven by the seasonal unavailability of insect prey at high elevations during winter. My territory, the area I defend against other owls of my species, varies greatly in size depending on habitat quality and food abundance. In rich habitats with dense prey populations, territories may be as small as 10 to 50 hectares. In poorer habitats, territories can exceed several square kilometers. Territory defense is energetically costly, involving regular vocal advertisement, patrolling flights, and occasional physical confrontations with intruders. However, the benefits of securing exclusive access to resources typically outweigh the costs. Territorial boundaries are not fixed lines, but rather zones of overlap and contestation. Neighbors may engage in countersinging, where each individual attempts to out-vocalize the other, or in boundary disputes, where both parties perch near the territorial edge and display aggressively. Physical combat is relatively rare but does occur, and when it does, it can be fierce. Owls may grapple in midair, locking talons and tumbling to the ground while striking with beaks and wings. Such fights can result in serious injuries or even death. More commonly, disputes are settled through displays and vocalizations, with the intruder eventually withdrawing. Not all owls are territorial. Some species are more tolerant of conspecifics and may have overlapping home ranges rather than exclusive territories. Burrowing owls often nest in loose colonies, with multiple pairs occupying burrows in close proximity. Short-eared owls may gather in communal roosts during the non-breeding season, with dozens of individuals roosting together in grassland or marsh vegetation. These social aggregations may provide benefits such as improved predator detection or information sharing about foraging opportunities, though the mechanisms and advantages are not fully understood. Social interactions beyond territoriality and breeding are limited in most owl species. We are not considered social in the way that many corvids or parrots are, with complex social networks and cooperative behaviors. However, we are not entirely solitary either. Pair bonds may be maintained year-round in resident species, and mates may roost in proximity or even together during the non-breeding season. In some long-lived species, pairs may remain together for multiple years or even for life, though this varies by species and population. Divorce, where a pair splits and one or both individuals repairs with new mates, does occur and may be triggered by reproductive failure or the death of one partner. My lifespan is highly variable, with maximum recorded ages ranging from a few years in small species to over 30 years in large species. However, average life expectancy is much lower due to high mortality in the first year of life. Juvenile mortality is primarily due to starvation, predation, and accidents such as collisions with vehicles or structures. Adults face lower mortality rates, but they are not immune to threats. Predation on adult owls is relatively rare, as few animals are capable of catching and subduing a healthy adult owl. However, great horned owls are known to prey on smaller owl species, and large terrestrial carnivores such as foxes or bobcats may kill roosting owls they encounter. In some regions, diurnal raptors such as goshawks or large eagles may occasionally take owls. Disease and parasites also impact survival. Owls host a variety of internal and external parasites, including blood parasites, intestinal worms, feather lice, and mites. In most cases, parasite loads are relatively low and have minimal impact on health. However, heavy infestations can weaken individuals, reducing their ability to hunt effectively or resist other stressors. Disease outbreaks, such as avian trichomoniasis or West Nile virus, have been documented in owl populations and can cause localized mortality events. West Nile virus, transmitted by mosquitoes, has been particularly devastating to some raptor populations, though owls appear to be less susceptible than hawks and eagles. Starvation is a major cause of death, especially during winter or during periods of low prey abundance. Owls have high metabolic demands, and they must consume a significant percentage of their body weight in food each day to maintain energy balance. Small owls may need to eat 25 to 30% of their body weight daily, while larger owls may require 10 to 15%. During prolonged periods without food, owls deplete their fat reserves, and eventually they begin to metabolize muscle protein, leading to progressive weakening and death. Young or inexperienced birds are particularly vulnerable, as they have smaller energy reserves and may not yet be proficient hunters. Anthropogenic threats have become increasingly significant. Habitat loss and fragmentation reduce the availability of suitable nesting and hunting areas, forcing owls into smaller, more isolated patches of habitat. This can lead to reduced prey availability, increased competition, and greater exposure to predators and human-related hazards. Agricultural intensification, urbanization, and logging all contribute to habitat degradation, though the specific impacts vary by region and species. Rodenticides, poisons used to control rodent populations, pose a particularly insidious threat. Owls that consume poisoned rodents accumulate toxins in their bodies, a process known as secondary poisoning. Anticoagulant rodenticides, the most commonly used class, cause internal bleeding and death, often after a delay that allows the poisoned animal to be consumed by a predator. Studies have found high rates of rodenticide exposure in owl populations, with some individuals carrying detectable levels of multiple different poisons. Chronic exposure may weaken individuals, impairing their ability to hunt, reproduce, or survive winter, even if it does not immediately kill them. Vehicle collisions are another major source of mortality, particularly for species that hunt along roadsides or that cross roads during dispersal or migration. Owls hunting over roadside verges are attracted by the high rodent populations that thrive in these disturbed habitats, but their low, slow flight paths put them directly in the path of vehicles. Mortality from vehicle strikes is believed to be substantial, though it is difficult to quantify precisely because many carcasses are removed by scavengers before they can be recorded. Collisions with structures such as windows, fences, and power lines also take a toll. Barbed wire fences, in particular, pose a threat to owls, as the barbs can snag feathers and wings, causing injury or entrapment. Power lines cause mortality both through collision and electrocution, the latter occurring when a bird's body bridges the gap between two conductors or between a conductor and a grounded structure. Human persecution, while less widespread than in the past, still occurs in some regions. Owls have historically been viewed with suspicion or outright hostility due to superstitions associating them with death, witchcraft, or bad luck. In some cultures, owls are killed on sight, and their body parts may be used in traditional medicine or rituals. Even in regions where owls are legally protected, illegal shooting and trapping occur, driven by misplaced fears or simple ignorance. Climate change represents an emerging threat whose full impacts are not yet clear. Shifts in temperature and precipitation patterns are altering the distribution and abundance of prey species, potentially creating mismatches between owl breeding phenology and prey availability. Changes in snowfall patterns may affect the hunting success of species that rely on sound to detect prey beneath snow cover. Range shifts, where species move toward higher latitudes or elevations in response to warming temperatures, have been documented in some owl populations, though the long-term consequences for population viability are uncertain. Despite these threats, many owl populations remain relatively stable, and some species have adapted remarkably well to human-altered landscapes. Barn owls, for example, thrive in agricultural areas where barns, silos, and other structures provide nest sites, and where rodent populations are abundant in crop fields and pastures. Barred owls have expanded their range westward across North America over the past century, colonizing forests previously occupied only by spotted owls, and thriving in mixed and second-growth forests that may be less suitable for their congener. Conservation efforts have focused on habitat protection, nest box programs, reducing pesticide use, and public education. Nest box programs have been particularly successful for cavity nesting species, increasing reproductive success and allowing population expansion in areas where natural cavities are scarce. Legal protection under laws such as the Migratory Bird Treaty Act in North America and various national and international conservation agreements provides a framework for enforcement and management. Public education initiatives aim to counteract negative perceptions and highlight the ecological and cultural value of owls, fostering appreciation and stewardship. Research on owls has also expanded dramatically in recent decades, driven by advances in technology that allow researchers to study these elusive nocturnal birds in unprecedented detail. Radio telemetry and GPS tracking devices have revealed patterns of movement, habitat use, and behavior that were previously impossible to document. Acoustic monitoring, using arrays of automated recording devices, allows researchers to survey owl populations across large areas and to study vocal behavior without disturbing the birds. Genetic studies have clarified relationships among species and populations, informing taxonomy and conservation priorities. There are many misconceptions about owls that persist in popular culture and deserve correction. One of the most widespread is that owls can turn their heads 360 degrees. In reality, as I have explained, we can rotate our heads approximately 270 degrees in either direction, a total range of about 540 degrees, but we cannot achieve a full rotation. Another misconception is that all owls hoot. As I have detailed, different species produce a wide variety of vocalizations, many of which bear no resemblance to hooting. The idea that owls are universally wise, stemming from associations with the Greek goddess Athena, is a cultural construct with no basis in cognitive science. While owls possess sophisticated sensory and motor systems adapted for hunting, there is no evidence that we possess exceptional general intelligence compared to other birds. The belief that owls can see in complete darkness is also false. My vision, while highly sensitive, requires at least some light to function. In absolute darkness, I rely entirely on hearing to hunt. Conversely, the notion that owls are blind during the day is equally incorrect. While my eyes are optimized for low light, I can see perfectly well in daylight, though I am typically inactive during these hours for other reasons, such as avoiding overheating, conserving energy, or reducing exposure to diurnal predators and mobbing by smaller birds. Mobbing behavior, the coordinated harassment of predators by potential prey, is a common experience for roosting owls. When small birds such as crows, jays, chickadees, or other songbirds discover a roosting owl, they often gather around and vocalize loudly, sometimes diving at the owl or striking it with their feet. This behavior serves to alert other prey animals to the predator's presence, to harass the predator and potentially drive it away, and possibly to teach young birds to recognize predators. For the owl, mobbing is an annoyance and a potential energetic cost, as the commotion may prevent rest and force the owl to relocate to a new roost. However, mobbing rarely results in injury, and most owls simply endure it until the mobbing birds lose interest or move on. My relationship with humans is complex and varies across cultures. In some traditions, owls are revered as symbols of wisdom, protection, or spiritual insight. In others, we are feared as omens of death or misfortune. These cultural attitudes influence how humans interact with owls and whether conservation efforts receive public support. In Western cultures, the association with wisdom has generally been positive, and owls feature prominently in literature, art, and popular media. However, even in cultures where owls are generally viewed favorably, there can be conflicts when owls nest in or near human structures, leading to noise complaints or concerns about safety, particularly when aggressive species defend their nests. Owls also play a role in pest control, providing ecosystem services that benefit human agriculture and forestry. A single barn owl family may consume thousands of rodents over the course of a breeding season, reducing crop damage and the need for chemical rodenticides. In regions where nest box programs have been implemented for barn owls, farmers have reported measurable reductions in rodent population and associated crop losses. This has led to growing interest in promoting owls as a biological control agent, though the effectiveness varies depending on factors such as habitat structure, prey availability, and the specific pest species involved. Scientific research has long been fascinated by owls, and we have served as model organisms for studies of sensory biology, neurobiology, biomechanics, and behavior. The auditory system of barn owls, in particular, has been extensively studied and has provided fundamental insights into how the vertebrate brain processes sound. The discovery of the neural mechanisms underlying sound localization in barn owls has had applications beyond ornithology, informing the development of hearing aids, cochlear implants, and audio processing algorithms. The study of owl flight has similarly contributed to broader fields. The mechanisms of silent flight have inspired engineering applications, with researchers developing turbine blades, aircraft components, and fan designs that incorporate features mimicking owl wing structures to reduce noise. While practical implementations are still in development, the principle demonstrates how understanding natural adaptations can lead to technological innovation. My daily routine, when observed in detail, reveals the intricate balance of behaviors that define my existence. As daylight fades and I rouse from my roost, I begin with a period of preening and stretching, preparing my body for the night's activities. I may vocalize to announce my presence to my mate or to reaffirm territorial boundaries. Then I move to a hunting perch, selecting a location with good visibility and acoustic access to the surrounding area. I settle into stillness, my head moving in subtle scanning motions, my ears tuned to the environment. Minutes may pass in silence. Then a faint rustling reaches my ears, the sound of a vole moving through grass 30 meters away. I turn my head, fixing the source of the sound. I wait, confirming the location and trajectory. Then I launch, wings spreading silently, body angling toward the target. I glide low over the ground, using my tail to adjust my path, my legs swinging forward as I near the spot. My talons strike, pinning the vole against the earth. The impact is precise, and the prey's struggles cease almost immediately. I mantle over the catch, spreading my wings to conceal it from potential competitors, and deliver a killing bite if needed. Then I swallow the vole whole, head first, feeling it slide down my throat. This process repeats throughout the night. Not every attempt is successful. Sometimes the prey escapes into cover before I can reach it. Sometimes I misjudge the distance or the prey's movement and strike empty ground. On a good night, I may catch 5 or 6 prey items, enough to meet my energy needs and to provision my mate or young if it is breeding season. On a poor night, I may catch only 1 or 2, or even none, forcing me to dip into my fat reserves and to hunt again the following night with greater urgency. As dawn approaches, my hunting activity declines. I make my way back toward my roosting area, perhaps stopping to cache a prey item in a tree crevice or on a branch if I have caught more than I can immediately consume. Caching behavior is more common in northern species and during winter, when temperatures keep cached prey from spoiling. I then settle onto my roost, tucking one foot up into my belly feathers and fluffing my plumage for insulation. My eyes close to slits, and I enter a state of rest, though I remain alert to sounds and movements around me. This is how I pass the day, motionless and cryptic, conserving energy until the cycle begins again at dusk. When I have a mate and young, my routine changes dramatically. The male's role becomes focused on provisioning, with hunting trips occurring more frequently and prey being delivered to the nest or to the fledglings rather than consumed immediately. A male barn owl during peak chick rearing may make more than a dozen hunting trips per night, each time capturing prey and carrying it back to the nest. This is an exhausting schedule, and males often lose body condition over the course of the breeding season, only recovering after the young become independent. The female's role during early chick rearing is to brood the young, keeping them warm and protected while the male hunts. As the chicks grow and develop better thermoregulation, the female begins to leave the nest for longer periods and may resume hunting to supplement the male's provisioning. By the time the chicks are fledging, both parents are hunting intensively, working to meet the enormous food demands of the rapidly growing young. The fledging period brings new challenges. The young, now mobile but still dependent, scatter around the nest area, each calling loudly to attract parental attention. The parents must locate each chick in turn, often spread across several hundred meters, and deliver prey to each one. The chicks are vulnerable during this time, and the parents are vigilant, responding aggressively to any potential threat. Gradually, as the weeks pass, the young become more competent at following the parents and eventually begin to attempt hunting themselves. The parents reduce provisioning gradually, forcing the young to become more self-sufficient. Finally, the young disperse or are driven away as the parents prepare for the next breeding season, or as the territory becomes too small to support the additional individuals. My experience of the world is fundamentally different from that of a diurnal animal. I navigate a landscape defined by sound and shadow, where the rustling of a mouse is as conspicuous as a bright color would be in daylight. I know my territory intimately, not through visual landmarks alone, but through an acoustic and spatial memory that maps the location of productive hunting areas, reliable perches, and safe roost sites. I remember where prey have been abundant in previous nights and return to those areas. I learned to associate certain habitat features with higher prey density, such as the edges of clearings, the boundaries between forest and grassland, or the margins of streams. My perception of time is structured by the rhythms of night and day, by the lunar cycle that affects light levels and prey activity, and by the seasonal changes that drive breeding, migration, and shifts in food availability. I do not measure time as humans do, but I am attuned to the patterns that govern my life. I know when the nights are growing longer or shorter, when the prey populations are peaking or declining, when it is time to begin courtship or to prepare for winter. My cognitive abilities, while specialized for my ecological niche, are substantial. I can learn and remember complex spatial information, recognize individual conspecifics by voice, adjust my hunting strategies based on experience, and solve problems such as how to extract prey from difficult locations. Experimental studies on captive owls have demonstrated capabilities such as tool use, though this is rare and not part of natural behavior, and the ability to discriminate between different quantities, suggesting some numerical cognition. However, my intelligence is not general purpose. I excel at tasks related to hunting and survival in my environment, but I lack the flexibility and innovation seen in some other bird groups, such as corvids or parrots, which have evolved in different ecological contexts, favoring different cognitive skills. My emotional life, to the extent that it can be inferred, appears to include basic affective states such as fear, aggression, and possibly something analogous to satisfaction or contentment when needs are met. I respond to threats with clear fear responses, fleeing or freezing depending on the situation. I display aggression in territorial and breeding contexts, with postures and vocalizations that indicate arousal and readiness to fight. Whether I experience more complex emotions such as grief, jealousy, or joy is unknown and may be unknowable, as these internal states are difficult to assess even in humans without verbal communication. My contribution to the ecosystem extends beyond my role as predator. By controlling rodent populations, I influence vegetation dynamics, as high rodent densities can suppress plant growth through herbivory and seed predation. My predation on insects, where applicable, affects insect population dynamics and may indirectly benefit plants by reducing herbivorous insect abundance. My presence in a habitat can alter the behavior of prey species, creating what ecologists call a landscape of fear, where prey modify their activity patterns, foraging locations, or vigilance levels to reduce predation risk. These behavioral shifts can have cascading effects through the ecosystem, influencing everything from seed dispersal to nutrient cycling. When I die, my body becomes a resource for scavengers and decomposers. Carrion beetles, flies, and other invertebrates colonize the carcass, breaking down tissues and recycling nutrients back into the soil. Larger scavengers such as foxes, ravens, or vultures may consume the remains. Even my feathers, shed during molts throughout my life, provide material for nest building by other birds or insulation for small mammal nests. In this way, I remain part of the ecosystem even after my life has ended, contributing to the cycles of matter and energy that sustain the living world. The study of fossils has revealed that owls have changed surprisingly little over tens of millions of years, suggesting that our body plan is highly optimized for our ecological role. Fossil owls from the Eocene and Oligocene epochs, 30 to 50 million years ago, show clear similarities to modern species, with features such as asymmetrical ear openings and specialized wing feathers already present. This evolutionary stability implies that the nocturnal aerial predator niche has been relatively constant over deep time, and that the adaptations we possess have been maintained by stabilizing selection. However, there has also been evolutionary change within the owl lineage. The diversification of species, the evolution of different hunting strategies, the colonization of new habitats, and the development of specialized traits such as fishing owls' aquatic adaptations all demonstrate that owls continue to evolve in response to ecological opportunities and challenges. Molecular clock analyses, which use the rate of genetic change to estimate divergence times, suggest that many modern owl genera originated within the last 10 to 20 million years, a period of significant global cooling, and the expansion of grassland and open habitats. This environmental change likely created new ecological opportunities that owls exploited through adaptive radiation. The relationship between barn owls and typical owls, the two families within the order, is ancient, with the split estimated to have occurred approximately 60 million years ago. Barn owls are distinguished by their heart-shaped facial discs, relatively longer legs, and differences in skeletal structure and vocalization. Despite these differences, the convergence in lifestyle and ecology between the two families is striking, demonstrating that the nocturnal aerial predator niche imposes strong selective pressures that drive similar evolutionary outcomes. Human fascination with owls is nearly universal, appearing in the art, mythology, and literature of cultures around the world. In ancient Greece, the owl was sacred to Athena, goddess of wisdom, and appeared on Athenian coins. In ancient Rome, an owl's hoot was considered an omen of death. In Hindu culture, the owl is associated with the goddess Lakshmi, though it also has negative connotations in some contexts. In Native American traditions, owls hold diverse meanings, from wise counselors to harbingers of death, depending on the tribe and region. In Japanese culture, the owl is considered a lucky symbol and a protector against hardship. In many African cultures, owls are associated with witchcraft and are feared and persecuted. These varied cultural interpretations reflect the enigmatic nature of owls. Our nocturnal habits, silent flight, eerie vocalizations, and forward-facing eyes that seem to stare with uncanny intelligence all contribute to a sense of mystery and otherworldliness. For much of human history, owls were encountered primarily as disembodied voices in the darkness or as fleeting glimpses of shadowy forms, reinforcing their association with the unknown and the supernatural. Modern scientific understanding has demystified many aspects of owl biology, yet it has also deepened our appreciation for the remarkable adaptations that allow us to thrive in the nocturnal world. The discovery of the mechanisms underlying silent flight, acute hearing, and precise strike coordination has revealed an elegance of natural engineering that inspires both scientific inquiry and technological innovation. At the same time, conservation challenges remind us that owls, for all their adaptations, are vulnerable to the rapid environmental changes driven by human activity. Population monitoring programs which track owl numbers and distribution over time provide essential data for conservation decision-making. In some regions, owl populations are stable or increasing, reflecting successful habitat protection, reduced persecution, and effective management. In other regions, declines are documented, driven by habitat loss, pesticide exposure, climate change, or other factors. Long-term data sets, some extending over several decades, have revealed trends that would be invisible in short-term studies and have highlighted the importance of sustained monitoring efforts. Citizen science initiatives, where members of the public contribute observations and data, have greatly expanded the scale and scope of owl monitoring. Programs such as eBird, Christmas bird counts, and specialized owl surveys engage thousands of volunteers, generating millions of data points that inform our understanding of distribution, abundance, and phenology. These initiatives also serve an educational function, raising public awareness of owls and fostering a sense of stewardship. Captive breeding programs have been employed for some critically endangered owl species, though the challenges are substantial. Owls are difficult to breed in captivity, requiring specialized facilities, experienced husbandry, and careful attention to diet, social dynamics, and environmental conditions. Success has been achieved with some species, and captive-bred individuals have been released into the wild to supplement declining populations. However, reintroduction programs face challenges such as ensuring released birds have adequate hunting skills, avoiding imprinting on humans, and addressing the underlying threats that cause the population decline in the first place. Legal frameworks for owl conservation vary by country and region. In many developed nations, owls are protected under wildlife laws that prohibit hunting, capture, and disturbance without permits. International agreements such as the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora regulate trade in owl species and their parts, reducing the threat from illegal wildlife trafficking. However, enforcement is uneven, and in some regions, legal protections exist on paper but are not effectively implemented due to lack of resources, political will, or public support. Habitat conservation is widely recognized as the most effective long-term strategy for owl conservation. Protecting and restoring forests, grasslands, wetlands, and other habitats that owls depend on ensures that the resources necessary for survival and reproduction are available. Landscape-level planning, which considers connectivity between habitat patches, movement corridors, and the spatial configuration of land uses, is increasingly employed to maintain viable owl populations across fragmented landscapes. In some cases, conservation easements, land purchases, or legal designations such as protected areas are used to secure critical habitats. Human-owl coexistence in urban and suburban areas presents both challenges and opportunities. Some owl species adapt well to human presence, nesting in parks, cemeteries, golf courses, and residential areas. These urban owls may benefit from abundant prey, such as rats and mice attracted to human food waste, and from reduced predation pressure, as large mammalian predators are often absent from urban environments. However, urban owls also face threats such as vehicle collisions, window strikes, poisoning from rodenticides, and disturbance from human activity. Urban planning that incorporates green spaces, preserves large trees, and minimizes light pollution can create conditions that support owl populations. Light pollution, the excessive and misdirected artificial lighting of the nighttime environment, is an emerging concern for nocturnal wildlife, including owls. While owls can hunt under artificial lighting, and some species may even benefit from lights that attract insects or illuminate prey, there is evidence that light pollution can disrupt natural behaviors, alter predator-prey dynamics, and fragment habitats. Street lighting, in particular, creates a patchwork of illuminated and dark areas that may affect how owls move through the landscape and how prey animals respond to predation risk. Research in this area is ongoing, and the implications for owl conservation are not yet fully understood. Noise pollution, another anthropogenic stressor, has the potential to interfere with owls' acoustic hunting. Chronic noise from highways, industrial sites, or urban areas may mask the sounds of prey, reducing hunting efficiency. There is some evidence that owls avoid nesting or hunting in areas with high noise levels, though this varies by species and by the characteristics of the noise. Low-frequency noise may be less disruptive than high-frequency noise, and continuous noise may be less problematic than intermittent, unpredictable sounds. More research is needed to fully understand the impacts of noise pollution on owl populations and to develop mitigation strategies. Climate change, as previously mentioned, represents a complex and multifaceted threat. Changes in temperature, precipitation, and extreme weather events are altering ecosystems in ways that cascade through food webs. For owls, potential impacts include shifts in prey abundance and distribution, mismatches between breeding phenology and food availability, changes in snow cover that affect hunting, and range shifts that may bring species into novel competitive or predatory interactions. Some owl species may be able to adapt through behavioral plasticity or evolutionary change, while others, particularly habitat specialists with narrow ecological requirements, may face population declines or extirpation from parts of their range. Predicting the future for owls requires integrating knowledge of their biology, ecology, and the threats they face with projections of environmental change. Models suggest that some species may expand their ranges poleward or to higher elevations, while others may experience range contractions. The connectivity of habitats, the availability of climate refugia, and the capacity of owls to disperse and colonize new areas will all influence outcomes. Conservation strategies that enhance landscape connectivity, protect diverse habitat types, and reduce non-climate stressors such as pollution and persecution can increase the resilience of owl populations to climate change. The role of genetics in conservation is increasingly recognized. Genetic diversity within populations provides the raw material for adaptation to changing conditions, and maintaining genetic connectivity between populations reduces the risk of inbreeding depression. Conservation genetic studies, using techniques such as microsatellite analysis and whole genome sequencing, assess genetic diversity, identify distinct populations, and detect signs of inbreeding or genetic bottlenecks. This information informs management decisions such as translocation of individuals to increase genetic diversity, identification of priority populations for protection, and assessment of the risks associated with small or isolated populations. Disease ecology, the study of how diseases affect wildlife populations, is another growing field relevant to owl conservation. Understanding the pathogens that affect owls, their modes of transmission, and their impacts on survival and reproduction allows for better management of disease risks. In some cases, diseases may be exacerbated by environmental stressors such as pollution or habitat loss, which weaken individuals and make them more susceptible. In other cases, diseases may spill over from domestic animals or may emerge as novel pathogens due to changes in host distributions or climate. Monitoring for disease and implementing biosecurity measures can help mitigate these risks. The intersection of traditional ecological knowledge and scientific research offers additional insights into owl ecology and conservation. Indigenous peoples and local communities often possess detailed knowledge of owl behavior, distribution, and ecological relationships accumulated over generations. Integrating this knowledge with scientific data can improve conservation strategies, identify previously undocumented populations or threats, and foster collaborative management approaches that respect cultural values and practices. Education and outreach are critical components of owl conservation. Changing public perceptions, particularly in regions where owls are feared or persecuted, requires sustained efforts to provide accurate information, highlight the ecological and economic value of owls, and address the cultural beliefs that drive negative attitudes. School programs, community workshops, media campaigns, and ecotourism initiatives all contribute to building support for owl conservation. When people understand that owls provide valuable pest control services, pose little threat to human safety, and are an integral part of healthy ecosystems, they are more likely to support conservation measures and to coexist peacefully with these birds. My existence as an owl is both simple and complex. On one level, I am a predator, driven by hunger and the need to survive and reproduce, engaging in behaviors that are instinctive and shaped by millions of years of evolution. On another level, I am part of intricate ecological networks, interacting with prey, competitors, predators, parasites, and the physical environment in ways that ripple through ecosystems. I am also an individual, with unique experiences, learning history, and perhaps even rudimentary preferences and personality traits that distinguish me from others of my species. Each night as I hunt, I am participating in an ancient process, the transfer of energy from one trophic level to another, the consumption of prey to fuel my metabolism and to provision my offspring. I am a node in the food web, connecting primary consumers such as rodents to higher-level predators and scavengers. My success or failure influences the abundance of my prey, the structure of plant communities, and the survival of my own lineage. This is the ecological context in which I exist, a context that extends far beyond my individual experience, but is nonetheless shaped by the cumulative actions of individuals like me. The night is my realm, and within it I am supremely adapted. My senses filter and interpret the darkness, extracting information that guides my movements. My body, shaped by evolution, is a finely tuned instrument for flight, predation, and survival. My behavior, a product of both instinct and learning, navigates the challenges of finding food, avoiding threats, and reproducing. And yet, for all my adaptations, I am vulnerable to forces beyond my control, forces unleashed by a species that has transformed the planet in ways unprecedented in the history of life. Understanding what I am, how I live, and the challenges I face is not merely an academic exercise. It is essential for ensuring that owls continue to inhabit the night, to regulate prey populations, to inspire human imagination, and to serve as indicators of ecosystem health. The choices humans make about land use, pesticide application, energy infrastructure, and climate policy will determine whether future generations experience the thrill of hearing an owl's call in the darkness, or whether that sound becomes a memory, preserved only in recordings and literature. I am an owl, and my story is still being written. It is a story shaped by deep evolutionary history, by the ecological relationships that bind me to my environment, by the behaviors and adaptations that define my existence, and by the actions of the human species, which now holds an outsized influence over the fate of the natural world. Whether that story continues into the distant future depends on whether humans choose to protect the habitats, prey populations, and ecological processes that sustain me, and on whether they can coexist with a creature that, though different in so many ways, shares with them the need to survive, to thrive, and to persist in an ever-changing world. The night falls and I rouse once more. My body shifts, feathers fluffing and settling, muscles stretching in preparation for the hours ahead. I turn my head, scanning the forest edge, listening to the symphony of sounds that define my world. Somewhere in the darkness, prey are moving, unaware of my presence. I launch from my perch, wings spreading wide, and glide silently into the night. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is the life of an owl. As I continue to hunt through the seasons, the changes in my environment become increasingly apparent. Spring arrives with longer days and warming temperatures, triggering a cascade of biological activity. Plants leaf out, insects emerge, and prey populations begin to increase as rodents start their breeding season in earnest. For me, this is the time of greatest energy demand if I am breeding, as I must not only feed myself but also provide for a mate who is incubating eggs and, later, for growing chicks whose appetites seem limitless. The transition from winter to spring is marked by subtle shifts in my behavior and physiology. My vocalizations increase in frequency and intensity as I reinforce territorial boundaries and communicate with my mate. Hormonal changes, triggered by increasing day length, prepare my body for reproduction. In males, testosterone levels rise, driving territorial aggression and courtship behavior. In females, the reproductive system becomes active, with follicles in the ovary developing into eggs. The energetic cost of egg production is substantial, requiring the female to consume additional food in the weeks before laying. This is one reason why courtship feeding, where the male provisions the female, is so important. It not only demonstrates the male's quality as a provider, but also directly supports the female's ability to produce viable eggs. The timing of breeding is critical. If eggs are laid too early, cold weather and scarce food may reduce chick survival. If eggs are laid too late, chicks may fledge after the peak of prey abundance has passed, again reducing survival. Natural selection has fine-tuned the breeding phenology of each owl species to match local conditions, but this tuning is based on historical environmental patterns. As climate change alters the timing of spring warmth and prey availability, there is potential for mismatches to develop. Some studies have documented shifts in owl laying dates in response to warming temperatures, suggesting that at least some species have the capacity to adjust. However, the extent of this plasticity and whether it will be sufficient to track rapid environmental change remains uncertain. Once eggs are laid and incubation begins, the female's world shrinks to the confines of the nest or cavity. She sits motionless for hours, maintaining the eggs at the precise temperature required for development. The male's role becomes critical during this period, as he must provide all the food for both himself and the incubating female. If the male is killed or injured, the female faces a difficult choice: abandon the nest to hunt for herself, likely causing the eggs to chill and die, or remain on the nest and risk starvation. In some cases, females have been observed leaving the nest for brief hunting forays, gambling that the eggs can tolerate short periods of cooling, but this is risky and often unsuccessful. The hatching of the first chick marks a new phase. The female now has an active, demanding offspring that requires warmth and food. The chick, initially tiny and helpless, grows rapidly, doubling or tripling in weight within the first week. The male's hunting effort intensifies, and prey deliveries become more frequent. The female tears prey into small pieces suitable for the chick's tiny beak and gently offers them. As subsequent eggs hatch over the following days, the brood grows, and so do the demands on the parents. The size hierarchy within the brood becomes evident quickly. The oldest chick, having a several-day head start, is noticeably larger and more vigorous than its younger siblings. When the male delivers prey to the nest, the female typically feeds the oldest chick first, as it is the most vocal and aggressive in begging. Younger chicks receive food only after the oldest is satiated. In years of abundant prey, this system works well, and all chicks receive sufficient food. In lean years, the youngest chicks may receive little or nothing, and they weaken and die. This brood reduction, while seemingly harsh, is an adaptive strategy. By concentrating resources on the oldest, most viable chicks, the parents maximize the number of offspring likely to survive to independence. Raising 4 weak chicks that all die before fledging is less successful than raising 2 strong chicks that survive. As the chicks grow, their demands escalate exponentially. By the time they are 2 to 3 weeks old, they are consuming substantial amounts of food, and both parents may be hunting to keep up. The nest becomes increasingly crowded and filthy, littered with prey remains, pellets, and feces. The odor is pungent, a mixture of decay and ammonia, and it serves as a signal to potential predators and parasites. Nest sanitation is not a priority for owls. The young are raised in what would be considered squalid conditions by human standards, though the chicks themselves seem unaffected. The nestling period is a time of rapid development. Feathers emerge from their sheaths, replacing the down. The chicks' eyes open, and they begin to take an interest in their surroundings. They engage in play-like behaviors, pecking at each other, grasping objects with their talons, and flapping their developing wings. These activities are not frivolous. They are practice for the skills they will need as adults. Wing flapping strengthens flight muscles. Talon grasping hones coordination, and sibling interactions establish dominance hierarchies that may influence future social behavior. In cavity nesting species, the young remain in the cavity until they are nearly full-grown and capable of sustained flight. In open nest species, the young may leave the nest earlier, moving onto nearby branches in a behavior called branching. Branching allows the young to spread out, reducing competition for space and food, and to begin exercising their wings in preparation for fledging. However, it also exposes them to greater risk from predators and weather. The moment of fledging is a critical transition. The young owl, having spent its entire life in the security of the nest or cavity, launches into the air for the first time. Initial flights are often clumsy and short, more controlled falls than true flight. The young bird may land on the ground or in low vegetation, and it must then climb or flutter to a safer location. During the first few days after fledging, mortality risk is at its highest. Terrestrial predators such as foxes, coyotes, bobcats, and domestic cats and dogs take a heavy toll on grounded fledglings. Starvation is also a risk if parents cannot locate and provision the scattered young. Parents continue to feed fledglings for weeks or even months, but the young gradually become more independent. They follow the parents on hunting trips, observing and possibly learning by watching. They begin to make their own clumsy hunting attempts, often failing at first but gradually improving. The transition from dependence to independence is gradual and varies by individual. Some young master hunting relatively quickly, while others struggle and may remain dependent on parental provisioning for an extended period. Eventually, the parents cease feeding the young and may actively drive them away, especially as the next breeding season approaches. This forced dispersal is essential for reducing competition and for prompting the young to establish their own territories. Dispersal is a dangerous time. Young owls must navigate unfamiliar terrain, avoid established territorial adults, find food in areas where they have no experience, and avoid the many hazards of the modern landscape. Many do not survive their first year, but those that do gain the experience and skills necessary to become successful adults. The dispersal phase is also when gene flow occurs between populations. By moving away from their natal area, young owls reduce the likelihood of inbreeding and allow genetic mixing between populations. This genetic exchange is critical for maintaining genetic diversity and for allowing populations to adapt to changing conditions. However, dispersal also exposes young birds to barriers such as highways, urban areas, and large expanses of unsuitable habitat. In fragmented landscapes, dispersal success may be reduced, leading to increased inbreeding and reduced genetic diversity in isolated populations. Once a young owl successfully disperses and locates a suitable area, it must establish itself. This may involve settling in a vacant territory, challenging a resident adult for ownership, or remaining as a floater, a non-territorial individual that occupies marginal habitat and waits for an opportunity to claim a territory. Floater individuals may survive for months or even years in this state, though their reproductive success is typically zero. The availability of territories is often a limiting factor for population size, with high-quality territories held by established adults and only lower quality or newly vacated territories available to young birds. Establishing a territory involves not only finding a suitable area, but also advertising ownership and defending it against intruders. This is where vocalizations become critical. A young male taking over a territory must sing regularly to announce his presence, to deter competitors, and to attract a mate. If a female responds, courtship begins, and a pair bond may form. If the male is unable to attract a mate, his territory is less valuable, and he may be outcompeted by a more successful rival. Pair formation is a complex process involving assessment by both parties. Females evaluate males based on territory quality, vocal performance, courtship feeding, and possibly other signals of condition and genetic quality. Males similarly assess females, though the criteria are less well understood. Once a pair bond is established, the couple engages in behaviors that strengthen the bond, such as duetting, mutual preening, and spending time together. In long-lived species, pair bonds may endure for multiple years, with the same individuals pairing in successive breeding seasons. This long-term partnership can confer benefits, as experienced pairs may be more efficient at coordinating parental care and may have higher reproductive success than newly formed pairs. However, pair bonds are not unbreakable. Divorce can occur, particularly if breeding attempts fail repeatedly. In such cases, one or both members of the pair may seek new partners, presumably in the hope of improving reproductive success. Divorce rates vary by species and may be influenced by factors such as adult survival rates, territory availability, and population density. My life as an adult owl, once I have successfully navigated the challenges of youth and established myself, falls into a rhythm dictated by the seasons. Each year, I engage in the same cycle: territory establishment or maintenance in late winter, courtship and pair bonding, egg laying and incubation, chick rearing, post-breeding molt, and a period of relative inactivity before the cycle begins anew. This annual cycle is punctuated by the daily rhythm of dawn and dusk, the nightly hunt, and the daytime roost. Molt, the periodic replacement of feathers, is an essential but energetically costly process. Feathers wear out over time, losing their structure and function, and they must be replaced to maintain flight performance and insulation. Most owls undergo a single annual molt that begins after the breeding season and extends over several months. The molt is gradual, with feathers being shed and replaced in a specific sequence that ensures flight capability is never completely lost. Wing feathers are particularly important. Losing too many at once would render an owl flightless, so primary and secondary feathers are molted symmetrically and sequentially, a few at a time, so that gaps in the wing are minimized. During molt, my energy demands increase due to the metabolic cost of growing new feathers. At the same time, my flight efficiency may be temporarily reduced due to gaps in my wings and tail. This combination of increased energy needs and reduced hunting efficiency means that molt is a challenging period. I must hunt carefully, conserving energy and maximizing success rates, to avoid falling into negative energy balance. Weather during the molt period can be critical. Prolonged periods of rain or unseasonably cold temperatures can increase the challenge. Beyond the annual cycles, my life is shaped by stochastic events, unpredictable occurrences that can have profound impacts. A sudden cold snap may kill off prey populations, leading to a food shortage. A windstorm may destroy my nest site, forcing me to relocate. An encounter with a predator may result in injury. A vehicle may strike me as I cross a road. These events are inherently unpredictable, but their cumulative effect over a lifetime is substantial. Individuals that are unlucky, experiencing multiple adverse events, may have low lifetime reproductive success despite being otherwise capable. Conversely, individuals that are fortunate, avoiding major setbacks, may have high success. Luck is not the only factor, however. Individual quality, the combination of genetic endowment, early life conditions, and accumulated experience, also plays a major role. Individuals in good condition, with high-quality territories and effective hunting skills, are better able to weather challenges and to capitalize on favorable conditions. Over a lifetime, these differences accumulate, leading to substantial variation in reproductive success among individuals. In many bird populations, a small proportion of individuals produce the majority of offspring, a pattern that likely holds for owls as well. My sensory world, as I have described, is dominated by hearing and vision, but other senses also contribute. My sense of touch is mediated by specialized feathers around my beak, the rictal bristles, which help me sense nearby objects and may protect my eyes during struggles with prey. I also have tactile receptors in my feet, allowing me to feel the movements of captured prey and to adjust my grip. My sense of smell is generally considered poor, as is typical for birds, though recent research has challenged the assumption that birds lack olfactory capability. Some bird species use smell for navigation, finding food, or assessing mates, and it is possible that owls have more olfactory ability than traditionally thought, though evidence is currently limited. Taste is similarly understudied in owls. I do possess taste buds, though fewer than mammals, and I can presumably distinguish basic taste qualities such as sweet, sour, bitter, and salty. However, given that I swallow prey whole or in large chunks, taste may play a limited role in my feeding behavior. It is possible that taste helps me assess prey quality or detect toxins, but this remains speculative. My cognitive abilities extend beyond basic perception and motor control. I possess spatial memory, allowing me to remember the locations of roosts, hunting perches, prey concentrations, and territorial boundaries. This memory is likely supported by the hippocampus, a brain region involved in spatial learning and memory in many animals. The size of the hippocampus relative to overall brain size varies among owl species and may correlate with the complexity of spatial memory required by their ecology. I also learn from experience, adjusting my behavior based on past outcomes. If a particular hunting perch consistently yields successful strikes, I return to it. If a type of prey proves difficult to capture or handle, I may avoid it in favor of easier targets. If a particular vocalization attracts a mate, I may repeat it in future seasons. This learning is not conscious in the human sense, but rather represents the brain's ability to associate stimuli with outcomes and to modify behavior accordingly. Social learning, the acquisition of information or skills by observing others, has not been extensively studied in owls, but it likely occurs to some extent. Young owls may learn to recognize prey species or hunting techniques by watching their parents. They may also learn to recognize predators or other threats through social cues. However, much of owl behavior is instinctive, shaped by genetic programming rather than learning, and the relative contributions of instinct versus learning remain an area of ongoing research. Communication, as I have discussed, occurs primarily through vocalizations and visual displays, but there may be other modes as well. Chemical communication, through scent marks or pheromones, has not been documented in owls, but the possibility cannot be entirely excluded. Many bird species use preen gland secretions for feather maintenance, and these secretions may carry individual-specific chemical signatures that could convey information. Whether owls use such chemical cues is unknown. My interactions with other species extend beyond predation. I may compete with other predators for food, particularly with other owl species, diurnal raptors, or mammalian carnivores. Interspecific competition can influence habitat use, activity patterns, and even body size. In areas where multiple owl species coexist, they often partition resources by hunting different prey, using different habitats, or being active at different times. For example, in a forest containing both barred owls and great horned owls, the barred owl may focus on smaller prey and hunt more in wetland areas, while the great horned owl takes larger prey and hunts in more open forest or edge habitats. Predatory interactions also occur between owl species. As I mentioned, great horned owls prey on smaller owl species, including eastern screech owls, northern saw-whet owls, and barn owls. This intrigued predation, where one predator kills and eats another, can structure communities by limiting the abundance and distribution of smaller predators. In some cases, The mere presence of a larger owl species may exclude smaller species from otherwise suitable habitat, even if actual predation events are rare. Parasites and pathogens, though less visible than predators, exert significant influence on my health and survival. External parasites such as feather lice and mites are nearly ubiquitous, found on almost every wild owl examined. These ectoparasites feed on feather material or skin and can cause irritation and damage to plumage. Heavy infestations may reduce insulation or flight performance, though most owls carry low to moderate parasite loads that have minimal impact. Preening helps control ectoparasite numbers, and I spend a portion of each day meticulously grooming my plumage to remove or crush parasites. Internal parasites include blood parasites such as Hemoproteus and Leucocitozoon, protozoa transmitted by biting flies, and intestinal worms such as nematodes and cestodes. These parasites may reduce my condition, impairing growth, reproductive output, or survival, particularly if I am already stressed by other factors such as food shortage or injury. However, healthy individuals with adequate nutrition are generally able to tolerate moderate parasite loads without severe consequences. Pathogens including bacteria, viruses, and fungi pose more acute threats. Aspergillosis, a fungal infection of the respiratory system, can be fatal, particularly in stressed or immunocompromised individuals. Avian pox, a viral disease transmitted by mosquitoes, causes wart-like lesions on the skin and can impair vision or feeding if lesions develop around the eyes or beak. West Nile virus, as previously mentioned, is a mosquito-borne virus that can cause neurological disease and death. Owls appear less susceptible than some other raptors, but mortality events have been documented. Disease dynamics in wild owl populations are influenced by many factors, including host density, vector abundance, environmental conditions, and host immune function. In dense populations, diseases may spread more readily, while in sparse populations, transmission may be limited. Climate change, by altering the distribution and abundance of vectors such as mosquitoes, may influence disease risk in ways that are difficult to predict. My role in ecosystems extends to interactions with plants and other organisms that are not directly part of my diet. By controlling rodent populations, I indirectly affect plant communities. Rodents are seed predators and herbivores, and high rodent densities can suppress tree regeneration, alter plant species composition, and affect forest structure. By keeping rodent numbers in check, I may facilitate plant recruitment and maintain vegetation diversity. This is an example of a trophic cascade, where a predator's effects propagate down the food chain to influence primary producers. I may also influence ecosystem processes such as nutrient cycling. My prey, after being consumed and digested, is partially excreted as feces, which contains nitrogen and other nutrients. These nutrients are deposited around my roost sites, creating localized hotspots of nutrient input that may enhance plant growth. Similarly, prey remains that I discard or cache and forget decompose and return nutrients to the soil. Pellets, which accumulate beneath roosts, provide habitat and food for invertebrates, which in turn are prey for other animals, creating a small ecosystem fueled by my indigestible waste. The concept of ecosystem services, the benefits that humans derive from natural ecosystems, includes the pest control services that I provide. In agricultural landscapes, rodents can cause substantial crop damage, consuming seeds, seedlings, and stored grain. By preying on rodents, I reduce this damage, providing an economic benefit to farmers. Studies have attempted to quantify this benefit, estimating the value of rodent predation by owls in terms of reduced crop losses and reduced need for chemical rodenticides. These estimates suggest that the presence of owls can provide significant economic value, though the actual amount varies depending on crop type, rodent density, and owl abundance. Beyond direct economic value, I provide cultural services. Birdwatchers and wildlife enthusiasts derive enjoyment from observing owls, and ecotourism centered on owls generates revenue in some regions. Owl watching tour, particularly for charismatic species such as snowy owls, attract tourists and support local economies. This economic value provides an incentive for conservation, as communities recognize that protecting owls can have financial as well as ecological benefits. Owls also have educational value. We serve as ambassadors for nocturnal ecosystems, drawing attention to the importance and diversity of nighttime biodiversity. Environmental education programs that feature owls can inspire interest in science and conservation among students and the public. Captive owls used in educational programs, when handled ethically and responsibly, can provide opportunities for people to observe these birds up close and to learn about their adaptations and ecology. However, the use of captive owls in education and entertainment raises ethical considerations. Captivity can be stressful for owls, particularly if conditions are not appropriate or if birds are subjected to frequent handling or loud, crowded environments. There is also concern that close interactions with captive owls may give the public a misleading impression that these are tame or domesticated animals, potentially encouraging illegal capture or inappropriate attempts to keep owls as pets. Responsible educational programs emphasize that owls are wild animals requiring specialized care, and that they should be appreciated in their natural habitats. The ethics of studying wild owls is also a consideration. Research activities such as trapping, banding, and radio tagging involve temporary capture and handling, which can be stressful and carries some risk of injury. Researchers must balance the value of the knowledge gained against the welfare of individual birds. Ethical research protocols minimize handling time, use techniques that reduce stress and injury risk, and are approved by institutional animal care, and use committees or equivalent oversight bodies. In many cases, the knowledge gained from research contributes directly to conservation, justifying the short-term impacts on individual birds. Public attitudes toward owls, as I have mentioned, vary widely. In some regions, owls are beloved and protected, with active conservation programs and public support. In others, owls are persecuted due to superstition, fear, or misunderstanding. Changing these attitudes requires culturally sensitive education and outreach that respects local beliefs while providing accurate information. In some cases, engaging with community leaders, religious figures, or elders can be more effective than top-down education campaigns, as these individuals have credibility and influence within their communities. The role of art and media in shaping perceptions of owls is significant. Popular culture is replete with owl imagery, from children's books to movies to corporate logos. The portrayal of owls in these media can influence public attitudes. Positive, accurate portrayals can foster appreciation and support for conservation, while negative or misleading portrayals can reinforce fears and misconceptions. Researchers and conservation practitioners increasingly engage with artists, filmmakers, and writers to encourage responsible depictions of owls. Conservation success stories provide hope and demonstrate that positive change is possible. Barn owl populations in some regions have increased dramatically following the implementation of nest box programs and reduced use of rodenticides. Spotted owls, while still facing challenges from habitat loss and competition with barred owls, have benefited from legal protections and habitat conservation efforts. Eurasian eagle owls, once persecuted to near extinction in parts of Europe, have recovered and recolonized much of their former range following legal protection and changing attitudes. These successes highlight the importance of sustained, multifaceted conservation efforts that address multiple threats simultaneously. Habitat protection alone is insufficient if owls are still being poisoned by rodenticides. Legal protection is ineffective if it is not enforced or if public attitudes remain hostile. Conservation requires coordination across sectors, including government agencies, non-governmental organizations, researchers, landowners, and local communities. My future, and the future of owls as a group, is uncertain. The trajectory will be shaped by human choices in the coming decades. Will habitats continue to be destroyed and degraded, or will conservation and restoration efforts expand? Will climate change proceed unchecked, or will mitigation efforts slow the pace of environmental change? Will rodenticides and other pollutants continue to poison owls, or will safer alternatives be adopted? Will human populations continue to grow and expand, or will demographic transitions lead to stabilization and eventual decline? These are questions without clear answers, but the choices made will determine the answers. What is clear is that owls have persisted through enormous environmental changes over the course of our evolutionary history. We have survived ice ages, sea level changes, volcanic eruptions, and the arrival of modern humans. We have adapted to new predators, new prey, and new diseases. We have colonized new continents and radiated into new ecological niches. This track record suggests resilience and adaptability. However, the current rate and scale of environmental change are unprecedented, driven by a single species with the technological capacity to alter the planet in ways that dwarf natural processes. Whether our resilience will be sufficient to cope with this anthropogenic change remains to be seen. As I hunt through the night, I am unaware of these larger questions. My focus is immediate and tangible: the rustle of a mouse, the silent glide to intercept it, the strike and the kill. My life is lived moment to moment, night to night, season to season. I do not contemplate the future or reflect on the past. I simply am, a living embodiment of evolutionary adaptation, a predator shaped by natural selection to thrive in the darkness. And yet, my existence is not isolated. I am part of a web of relationships that extends across space and time. The prey I consume depends on plants, which depend on soil, water, and sunlight. The predators that threaten me depend on their prey, which may include me or my offspring. The parasites and pathogens I carry connect me to other hosts and vectors in complex disease networks. The genes I pass to my offspring carry the legacy of millions of years of evolution and will shape the traits of future generations. The sounds I make echo through the forest, heard by other owls, by prey, by predators, and by humans who pause to listen. The space I occupy, my territory, is a piece of the landscape that I defend and that supports me, a space that will outlast me and will be claimed by others when I am gone. This web of relationships, this embedding in ecological and evolutionary context, is what makes me more than a mere individual. I am a representative of my species, a participant in ecosystem processes, a link in the chain of life that connects the distant past to the distant future. Understanding this context, understanding how owls fit into the larger tapestry of life, is essential for appreciating our significance and for recognizing the consequences of our loss. If owls were to disappear, the consequences would ripple through ecosystems. Rodent populations would likely increase, leading to greater herbivory and seed predation, which could alter plant communities. Other predators might partially compensate, increasing their populations to take advantage of the additional prey, but the specific ecological role that owls play as nocturnal aerial predators with particular hunting styles and prey preferences would not be fully replicated. The loss of owl vocalizations would make the night quieter, less rich in sensory experience. The cultural and aesthetic loss would be profound, a diminishment of the natural heritage that connects humans to the wild. Fortunately, we are not on the brink of such a loss. Owls remain widespread and diverse, and many populations are stable or recovering. However, complacency is not justified. Threats are real and ongoing, and the challenges are likely to intensify in the coming decades. Maintaining owl populations will require vigilance, adaptive management, and a commitment to conservation that transcends political and economic considerations. My life as an owl, described here in exhaustive detail, is representative of the lives of millions of individual owls living across the planet. Each of us is unique, facing particular challenges and opportunities, yet all of us share the same fundamental adaptations, the same evolutionary heritage, the same needs for food, shelter, and reproduction. We are united by our nocturnality, our predatory lifestyle, our remarkable sensory and motor capabilities, and our role in ecosystems as regulators of prey populations. The depth and complexity of what it means to be an owl cannot be fully captured in words, even in the many thousands of words that constitute this narrative. There are aspects of my experience, my perception, my existence that remain inaccessible, not because they are deliberately hidden, but because they are inherently subjective and beyond the reach of external observation and description. Yet the attempt to understand, to document, to appreciate is valuable in itself. It fosters respect, inspires wonder, and provides the foundation for conservation. As I conclude this extended exploration of my life, I return to the simple, visceral reality of my existence. I am a hunter, a survivor, a participant in the ancient rhythms of predator and prey. I am shaped by evolution, constrained by ecology, and buffeted by chance. I am an owl, and I inhabit the night. This is my domain, my time, my life. And it is a life worth understanding, worth protecting, and worth preserving for the generations of humans and owls yet to come. Thank you for your time and dedication.